So today we're just going to be doing more of like a shadow fade. It's going to be, so we're going to go from the half guard by mid waist into the number 2 on top with the comb over and a hard part, right?
Yes.
Okay, so hard part at the top. So since I already know that I'm going to be using the number 2 at the top, I'm going to go ahead and debulk the rest of the hair with the 1.5 guard. And I'm just going to go right off the head with the 1.5 guard, not really going too high. Because in this area right here, that's where we're going to be using the number 2. And whenever I say we're going right off the head, I mean literally going off the head. So I have my blade sitting flat on the scalp, and whenever I go by the parotid ridge, I'm just going to go right off. I don't want to dig into this way above the parotid ridge, because then we're going to be taking a lot of this weight off, and it's going to create more of a round shape. And on guys, I typically like to give it more of a square silhouette. In the back, still the same position, just going right off the head. And as you get more comfortable and get more experience, you're going to be able to go a little bit quicker. But if this is a little bit too fast for you, then just practice putting your beveled edge right on the scalp and just go up. One motion, straight up. Okay? But like I said, as you get more practice, you're going to be able to go faster and really improve your speed on it. Okay, so now that we debulked everything with the 1.5 guard, we're going to begin with the half guard now. And like I said, the half guard, we're going to go right in the middle. Now, of course, if we wanted this fade to pop out a lot more, we could go in with the skin fade. But like I said, we're not trying to do that right now. It's a little bit cold outside in Louisiana, actually. A little weird, but it's actually cold outside. But whenever you're doing this half guard, the main thing you want to focus on is you really want to make sure you go in different angles and really understand how to read the hair. Nathaniel's hair really grows in different directions, especially right at his nape area. Down here, you can see how this hair likes to grow up. This hair is going more sideways and it's going down. Then in the middle of his head, his hair really does go straight sideways. You want to make sure we read the hair and go in the opposite direction of it. You want to go against the grain. And sometimes that requires you to really change up the position that you're holding your clipper. So now I simply went from this angle, rotated my clipper upside down, and I'm pretty much holding it like a pencil at this point. That way I can ensure that I'm going against the grain. So now my bottom guideline with the half guard is all complete. And one thing that I really want you to notice whenever you're doing these, so before I moved on to my next section to be able to fade out, I made sure this bottom part with the half guard was completely even and smoothed out. All right, so now we can move on to our next section. And I'm going to create my next section with the number 1 guard with the lever all the way close this time. Let's just go ahead and jump in with the lever all the way close. And I'm going to go up 1/2 inch right above the first guideline. And once again, the main thing you want to do with this is really make sure you're going to be making defined guidelines. So that way you can really see. Now, by making defined guidelines, sometimes it might be a little bit harder to take out the line. But at the same time, at least you won't be getting lost within the fade. You never want to get lost. The moment you get lost is whenever you're having consistency and the fade just comes out looking different on both sides. So now I have this section right here to fade out, which was created with the 1. So now in order to fade out the line between the half guard and the 1, I'm simply going to go in with the half guard again. And since I used the half guard with the lever all the way closed, I'm simply going to be opening about 1/4 inch. And I'm going to use my corner of the half guard to go up a little bit higher. And all we're really trying to do is create gradiency going from the half guard into the number 1. So I'm going to open my lever about halfway now. And I'm going to go just a little bit higher. And I was able to erase the line in between the half and the number 1, and at the same time create gradiency going all the way into the number 1. So now that that section is done, if you remember, we debulked all this area with the 1.5 guard. So now we're going to simply take our number 1 guard and put the lever all the way open, and that's going to be equivalent to the 1.5 guard. This is pretty much the same length, but it does offset it just a little bit to where it gets a little bit shorter, and it's going to be able to eliminate the line between the number 1 with the lever closed and the 1.5 guard with the lever all the way open. Important thing on this though is to really notice how I'm only utilizing this much of my blade. I'm not using a full blade anymore. I'm only using about that much of my blade. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I don't want to cut into areas that I don't want to be cut. If I were to use a full blade right now, I would end up creating another line. And that's the last thing I want to do. But you can tell that this front area is way lighter than the back area. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to close my lever about halfway on the number 1. And I'm going to start point cutting into the hair within this back area. My main focus is going to be this area now, because this area is pretty light. So I don't really have to worry about that. I'm just going to focus in the back, because I'm trying to match the back darkness to be just as light as the front. All right, now that we got that side faded out with the 1.5 guard, let's go ahead and begin the top. So on this top part, he does like to cut all the way up to his hard part. So we're simply gonna make sure we separate that long hair that we don't want to cut and just stay right below that and just debulk everything with the number 2 guard. Typically, it all depends on the client too, on whether or not we cut this area down. On him, his hair is a little bit more spiky, so I actually do like cutting it down. That way it doesn't poke out as much. But on some people, I really like to leave this area pretty long and create more weight to be able to create a different shape. But like I said, on some people, their hair actually lays down, unlike Nathaniel's. And no roast to Nathaniel. Are you taking some length off or no?
Nah.
All right, so now when it comes to the top, Nathaniel actually likes the length on it and doesn't want to take anything off. So a scissor tutorial is going to be for next time. But for right now, let's go ahead and put the part in. And something I really want you to notice is how I went ahead and did the sides and I haven't detailed yet. Typically on most of my haircuts, I don't like detailing as I go. I like going through my steps. Then at the very end, the last 10 minutes, that's whenever I actually go in and detail. So I am a little shorter, so I always ask my clients to tilt their head towards me. That way I can really see the top of their head. One of the main things you really want to pay attention to whenever doing a part is that you really want to create a natural part, good parting with your comb first. You want to make sure that the line is going to be straight and there's no hairs overhanging it, because the last thing we want to do is create a patch on top of their head. So whenever I do a hard part, I typically begin with the clipper facing down and I do the bottom line first. So just put your blade on the scalp and just kind of wiggle it a little bit. So now that we're doing the bottom line, we can go in with the top line and same thing. I'm really making sure I see where the roots are actually at. That way I don't end up cutting too far into them. And once again, whenever you do this part, you want to keep your clipper tilted in as much as possible and just wiggle back and forth just a little bit, making your way down. And by the time you do the bottom line and the top line, you should come out with the perfect width. All right, now, some of my clients, I like to keep their hairline pretty natural, but on him, we can really tell that he's got a really defined widow's peak in the front. And some people like to leave the widow's peak. Others like to cut it off. Nathaniel's actually one of the ones that likes to cut it off, which I completely agree. A lineup on him fits him pretty well. So the way I'm gonna do a lineup is that I'm gonna start right in the middle where the widow's peak is. And I'm going to see the highest point of the hairline. So we can tell this hair comes down lower, and this comes lower, and this a little bit higher, and this a little bit higher. I want to choose the highest point where the hair doesn't grow, and this would be it. So I want to begin my guideline right in that section and work my way back a little bit at a time. And I'm gonna work on this side first, pretty much completely taking out the widow's peak. So it's side. And the way that I'm doing this is by placing my index finger right on his forehead. And that's really gonna keep my hand balanced. And then I'm using my thumb to guide me throughout the line. So with my thumb, I'm actually tilting in with it. Sometimes you do have to get a little bit cosmetic and end up pushing a little bit back. So we can see, we completely eliminated the widow's peak. A lot of people would disagree with that and say that you just have to go ahead and let it grow out, because from that it's gonna grow out super fast. But Nathaniel comes in regularly, so that's not really a problem. The moment it starts getting a little longer, he usually comes in for a haircut again, and we don't really have to worry about it. And it just gives him a much cleaner look. And once again, you always want to keep control of the head. So once again, I'm tilting his head towards me. That way I'm not all in this area just like being too much in his bubble. I want to stay away from his bubble and just tilt his head towards me. So I'm way over here now. Once again, I'm not right here. I'm way over here and I'm seeing him front face. And just to really define his hard part, I'm going to go in with the straight razor. And the main thing behind this is to keep the skin stretched as much as possible. That way you don't end up cutting him. But now that we have him etched up and the hard part in, now I can use the last 10 minutes to really detail, which Nathaniel has really good hair, so there's really not too many spots that I have to go over and detail. Only spots where I can really tell that I need to go back and detail in is once again his back area. The back area, somebody said, is always the most dense and darkest, but other than that, that's gonna be my main concentration, and I'm not really gonna focus too much in this area since it's already a little bit lighter. This is why it's so important to create nice clean sections. That way you have a really good understanding of what guard you left off with in that section. All right, so now that we've detailed, I feel like it came out pretty smooth. Like I said, this is more of a shadow fade. This is not a skin fade. Now, would a skin fade look good on him? Most definitely. We've done skin fades on him before, but just with work and everything, we didn't really go with the skin fade today, and sometimes a half guard works just as well.